to another Math Mayhem with Mr. Ballot. Today, we're going to be talking about a statistics standard called stem and leaf plots. So this is another way that we can visually represent data. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and explain how we create a stem and leaf plot. And then the next part we'll talk about is what we pull from it, or how we read a stem and leaf plot. So let's first talk about what is it and why do we use it, right? So a stem and leaf plot, it's another way we visually represent data, right? We've talked about dot plots. You might have heard of histograms. You might have heard of box plots. This is just another way we visually represent our data. And it's definitely a quicker way to represent data. There are some positives to it, some negatives to it, as there is with every visual representation of data. But after I go through and create it, see how comfortable you feel with it and see if you like it. So stem and leaf plots. So we have this set of data, right? We have all these numbers here, 5, 8, 10, 10, 12, 14, 15, 19, 20, 23. And I want to organize this data. So how we create a stem and leaf plot is we're first going to draw almost like a T-table in a way, or a T-chart, I should say. So it's going to look something like this. And we're going to just create something like that. And what we're going to put on here is we have on this left side, we have our stems. Okay, so stem. And on here we're going to have our leaves. Stem, leaf. And hence the name stem and leaf plot. Right? So what our stems represent, our stems are our tens. Which makes our leaves our ones. Okay? Your stems are tens, your leaves are 1. So I'm going to start by looking at my data and seeing, okay, let's see, what number in my tens place do I go up to? Well, I have zeros, right? Because 5 and 8, we're not up to 10 yet, so these are zeros. I have ones, I have a tens place in the ones, and I have a tens place in the twos. Okay, so I'm going to just go up to 3 just for the heck of it. So I'm going to draw my first stem as a 3. And then after that, I'll just simply follow it in order. 3, 2, 1, 0. So I have my stems. Okay. Now I have to think about my leaves. Now, when you write this out, let's say, for example, my 2s, right? Because I don't have any 3s, so I'm not going to write anything there. But for my tens place in my 2s, I have 2 of them, right? I have 20 and 23. So when I write my leaves, I got to think about, okay, if I know this 2, if I read it as 20, let's say, well, what number comes after the 2 and 20? Well, it's a 0. And what number comes after the 2 and 23? Well, it's a 3. Right? So really what this is saying, this stem and leaf here, is I'm saying I have a value at 20, I have a value at 23. You do the same thing with the ones. So starting with my lowest, right, I have 2 tens, so that would be 2 zeros. I have a 12, so that would be a 2. A 14, which would be a 4. A 15, which would be a 5. And a 19, which would be a 9. Right, so simply what you're doing is you're taking your tens out and you're just writing what's left. So if I take 10 out of 19, I have 9 left. If I take a 10 out of 15, I have 5 left, and so on and so on and so on. Right? And then my zeros, well, that's simply what numbers do I have just alone, right? So I would have a 5, and I have an 8. And that is how you create a stem and leaf plot. It's really simple. It's really quick, right? You just simply pull out your tens and see what's left over. So if you were just reading this without knowing this data, I would know I would have a value at 5, and a value at 8, and then at 10, 12, 14, so on and so on and so on. The confusion people have with stem and leaf plots is when they're pulling their data and they look here, instead of writing 12, they'll write 2, because they don't think about, well, what is my stem, right? Because you got to think of these guys as 10, 20, 30, and then what number comes after them. And we'll see that a little bit more when we go through reading stem and leaf plots. But that's simply all it takes to create one. It just takes drawing the T-chart, putting your stems, putting your leaves, and that's it, as long as you represent all of your data. So now let's move over to actually reading a stem and leaf plot. So we have this stem and leaf plot here up top for us, and we have these questions below. How many people were surveyed? What's the median? What's the range? What's the IQR? And we're going to use this stem and leaf plot to answer these questions. So the first thing I'm going to do, though, before I even look at the questions, is I'm going to rewrite my data. And I'm going to pull it from this stem and leaf plot. So if I want to rewrite this and think, okay, what numbers do these all represent, right? Let's start with my lowest. Let's start at the bottom of my stem and leaf plot. So I have this stem of 5 and a leaf of 3. So remember, again, these guys are your 10s. These are your 1s. Right? So if I have a 5 as my stem and a leaf as my 3, that means that my first number is 53. My next number, again, now moving to the next 10s, so now I'm moving to the 60s. So my first one would be 65, 68, and then 69. Right? And that's all I'm doing. I'm simply just pulling out what are my 10s, what are my 1s, and I'm pulling out, well, what is that data point then when I put them together. So I'm going to do that for the rest of them. So now I'm in my 70s. So I have 70, 2 72s, and a 79. And then I'm in my 80s, so I have 83, 84, 85, 87, 89. And then in my 90s, I have 90 and 94. Perfect. And that's it. So now I could go ahead and answer these questions, right? How many people were surveyed? Well, that simply is just asking me, how many data values do you have, right? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 data values. So how many people were surveyed? Well, 15, right? And you don't even really need to rewrite the data to figure that one out. You could simply count, well, how many leaves do you have? Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So you could simply just count the amount of leaves you have to get to that answer of how many people were surveyed. Now your median. Okay, so remember, median is that middle number. So we're going to cross out our highest to our lowest. Right? So we have our highest, our lowest, our lowest, our highest, our lowest, our highest, our lowest, our highest, lowest, highest, lowest, highest, lowest, highest, and we get to this median of 79. So this guy is the median. Okay, so our median is 79. Okay, now remember, that now median, that splits our data in half. Okay, we'll talk about that when we get to IQR. So now our range, right? Our range is where we look at that maximum and that minimum, right? And we subtract them. So here we have our maximum. Here we have our minimum. So I have 94 minus 53. And 94 minus 53 is 41. Correct? Yes, 41. So our range would be 41. Okay? And now we're going to talk about IQR. So now we're going to look at my two halves, right? We have this lower half and we have this upper half. Okay? So let's start with our upper half. Right? And remember, this median splits the data in half. So I can even kind of draw a wall here because it splits my data in half there. Right? And we don't include that 79. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers here. So now we'll do this in a different color. I'll do it in blue. We're going to do the same thing where we cross out highest and lowest till we get to our median. So I'm going to lowest, highest, lowest, highest, lowest, highest. Here's my median of my upper half, or my Q3. And now let's do it for the lower half. We have lowest, highest, lowest, highest, lowest, highest. Here's my median of my upper half, or Q1. All right, and we know IQR means we're going to take Q3 and subtract Q1. So I have 87 minus 69, which is 18. So my IQR would be 18. And that's how you pull information from a stem and leaf plot, right? I like to rewrite all of my data to make it easier on myself. Could you simply just use the stem and leaf plot to answer those? Absolutely. No doubt about it. It's just easier and for me visually to do it if I rewrite my data and then go ahead and answer those questions. It might take an extra minute or two, but it really is a nice visual way and a way that you can make sure that you've got all your data values correct and you're more easily able to find these guys, like crossing out, labeling them what they are. It's just more kind of visually nice to me. But if you're someone who wants to just pull it from the stem and leaf plot and do it that way, that's totally fine. And that is how you read information and pull information from a stem and leaf plot. So like I said, this is one of the many ways that we use to visually represent data. I have more videos on the other ways. I'm going to have more videos coming out on the other ways that we do it. So there are some positives and some negatives to both of them, to all of them, I should say. And it really is up to you when you're given that option to say, hey, represent this data some way. You have to think about, well, what way makes the most sense? And now that you know what stem and leaf plots are and how to make them, now you can think about, well, does the stem and leaf plot make sense for this set of data? If you have any questions or comments, you can put them below. But until next time, guys, have a good day.